Now, let's first of all start with that. I want to get your view because I had a guest earlier in today on Regional Roundup who was very optimistic that things will bounce back. But is that your view as well? What's your view for the fourth quarter?
My view for the fourth quarter is
it more
bearish.
Of the same, or are we likely to stay in a trading range?
I don't think we'll stay in a trading range. There's not much that is actually going to propel the market. If you want to bottom fish, you bottom fish maybe for the first quarter of next year. But other than that, I don't see anything that's going to make the market rally. Yes, we're expecting third quarter results from the banks and other institutions, but I don't think there's going to be anything in it that is going to propel the market going forward. We've been falling like a lead stone. Technically, a lot of factors show that you can actually pick up stock cheap, but the structure of the Nigerian capital market is fundamentally flawed, right? The wrong people are holding the stocks. Naturally, it should be PFAs, insurance companies, asset managers, and a lot, but I think a lot of this stock is supposed to be held with the banks, held with stockbrokers, and it's not going to get any better. I'm sorry if I...
But the... you know, I have to apologize. But the interesting thing, though, is... because I was speaking to a broker today, and he's saying that the foreign investors are having a huge bearing on this market right now. They perhaps control maybe about 50 to 60% of trading. I mean, looking at their mentality and how they approach this market, they're probably bottom fishing, like you said. So in my view, don't you think that the market should be in a trading range? Because we've hit, I mean, for the banking stocks, for instance, we're now below the 2009 end levels for many of them.
Yeah, but then look at the structure of the market. A foreign fund manager bringing $1 million into the country, right, is about 150 million naira, right? It takes just 100,000 shares to move a price in either direction. Joe Public on the floor can actually come and sell and say he doesn't need the stock anymore. So whilst the foreign investors might come in, right, the local investors might also be selling, right? And there are different kinds of foreign investors. They're the hedge fund managers.
That's true.
They're the emerging market funds, right, who are possibly more of a longer term perspective. But from a local point of view, there are not. The majority of people holding this stock are not even sure they have a strategy in place, right? If it was held by PFAs, it was held by insurance companies, or held by asset managers, each of the portfolios they're managing would have a strategy, would have asset allocation, and they would just move it around at any particular point in time. But until we fix that structure, until there's economic news driving the results of companies, I don't think we're actually going to see anything
We'll
better.
talk about economic news in a minute, But in the context of the way the equity market is structured, like you pointed out, and of course looking at where yields are in the bond market, where yields are in the money market, how do you invest in this market right now?
Very, very challenging. But bottom line is everybody has to have a strategy. I mean, we run about 12 different portfolios. Each of those portfolios has a strategy. So whilst I can say we can actually bottom fish for some of the stocks, you've got to know what your holding period is going to be. If I want to trade this market, forget it. If you want to invest for a 3 to 5 year period, be very, very selective. But if you're actually sort of saying, how do you invest? I can't give you a straight answer because it'll actually depend on what your investment objective and your investment horizon is.
Okay, but let's move on to the economy now. It's been a tough year, but even though the GDP numbers don't tell the story, because half year GDP is in excess of 7% growth. Going into 2011 now, what are your expectations?
Initially, I was going to be optimistic. Elections will be done in January, between January and the 29th of May, right? The economy will teeter on a bit, and then after that. But now that it's been proposed that the election is going to be moved, I actually think there's going to be a lot of horse till April, right? There's going to be a lot of horse trading. So even if the new person gets sworn in on the 29th, right, before they select their cabinet, before it is approved by the Senate, and before they actually get sworn in, right, the first half is practically gone. So what's going to change? The expectations from the results for companies, I don't see that much. Inflation seems to be going out of hand. CBN has actually said they're going to target it. But then in doing that, they've also raised rates. So I'm not even sure the banks are going to lend to the real economy. So at the end of the day, I'm not too optimistic. From agriculture, okay, we might have very good harvest. The rainy season has been on us and so on and so forth. But naturally, how much of the agriculture feeds into the economy? The GDP is growing, fair enough, but we need infrastructure sorted out. We need power sorted out, right? There is one critical point. If we sort out power, the guy who's the mechanic doesn't his profit margins will grow because he doesn't need to think about petrol,
and he can be
right?
Powerful consumer.
A guy at home will possibly not think of actually, he'll possibly have more money to spend than spending it on diesel and so on. So I'm not too optimistic, but I would still rather be in this economy, right, than some other parts of the world.